this meeting to order. This is the North Miami Planning Commission meeting Thursday, June the 6th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in council chambers. Prior to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to allow Vice Chairman Charles Ernst to make some comments relative to D-Day. Please turn your microphones on. By the way, okay? Thank you.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman. Yes, before we did the Pledge of Allegiance, I just wanted to perhaps take a moment to remember those brave soldiers who stormed the beach at Normandy 75 years ago, and which was the beginning of the Great Crusade, as it was called. And just think about those that sacrificed themselves and those that survived. If we just take a moment to think of those brave soldiers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call of board members, please.
Chair Kevin Seifried,
Present.
Vice Chair Charles Ernst,
Present?
Commissioner Kenny Each,
He is excused. He's down in the Keys, I believe.
Commissioner Jason James,
Here.
Commissioner Bob Pashon,
Present.
Commissioner Michael McDermott,
Present.
Commissioner Milton Goodwin.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Do we have amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. PC item 9-19 will have to be rescheduled due to a noticing error. We would also like to add under old business, a presentation of the potential bonus allocation criteria.
All right. And that'll just be a report at that point.
What are we, Debbie, what are we taking out? What are we taking out because of the noticing error?
The
First item.
SDTOD, first item.
PC 919. Yeah, there was an error made in the ad, and so it's not a legal notice, and therefore we have to set that over to the July meeting. All right, so if that's the case, we move on to PC 10-19. This is a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving fiscal year 2019-2020. Oh, we forgot, before I get into that, we didn't approve the minutes. Marlene is waving the minutes in front of me. Yes, we need an approval on the minutes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One of those votes, and I can't remember which one, said that it was a 7-1 vote or 6-1 vote, and I voted against one of the items.
Yes,
It
you
made
did.
it 6-2, and I can't remember which one it was. Mr. Pashon, you and I,
It would have been 5-2, wouldn't it? Actually,
were, yeah, it was listed as 6-1, and it probably should be
That is correct.
5-2.
do we know which one would have been
I
5-2?
don't remember.
The rest of
but I
you
know
reading
I
this
remember
through?
It was the second item that we discussed.
The second item, well, if it was the second item, let's see, that's pretty easy to
And I-
nail down.
please
It wasn't
forgive me, but I
s-
just saw it and I saw
It
that-
wasn't 5-19, it would have been 6-19.
yes.
That was listed as 6-1, so we'll change that to 5-2. That's the
Thank you.
amendment. A motion and second to approve the amendment.
So moved.
All right, motion and second. I need a second on that. Seconded by Jason. Motion made by Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, not a problem. We strive for excellence and accuracy, and sometimes we miss it by one. All right, a motion made and seconded, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, Mr. Ernst moves to approve. Mike McDear made seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Marlene. All right, so now back to PC 10-19. A resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving fiscal year 2019-2020 action plan under the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnership Grant, HOME programs, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes. Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commission. For the record, Debbie Love, City Planner. Joining us tonight to present the staff report is our housing manager, Ms. Marie Jean-France, and I'll turn it over to her.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Marie-France Jean Farron, City of North Miami Housing and Social Services Manager. Presenting right today, it's the last fiscal year of the consolidated plan, fiscal year 1920, of the action plan that will be submitted to HUD. We had 2 meetings prior to your meeting tonight, one on the May 7th and one on May 8th. We are requesting your approval to substitute for the council meeting, to forward it to the council meeting that will be held 2 weeks from now. And attached, you will see what will be the allocation for this year. CDBG is proposed to have $757,246. Home will have an allocation of $269,234. In the back, you're gonna see the table, how the funds will be allocated. Program administration, which we cannot allocate no more than 20%, $151,000. The home rehab, economic development, public services, public facilities under the CDBG. Under home, you will see that we have the program administration where we cannot put no more than 10%. The CHOTO set aside, which partnership that we do have with developers, and single family rehab, first time home buyer and tenant based rental assistance. Everything is attached for your review. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. That concludes your report.
Yes, sir.
All right, did any members of the commission have any questions for the presenter? All right, hearing none, then we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this is invited to step forward. Public hearing is opened. I see no clouds of dust rising in the back. I hear no thundering herds rushing to the microphone. Last call for comments. There being none, the public hearing is dutifully closed. All right, gentlemen, do you have any discussion or do we move to adopt?
I would like to make a motion to adopt.
All right, Mike McDermott moves to adopt. Without further discussion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jason James. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, now our last.
Thanks for the report, Marie.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Let's
very much.
keep it succinct and to the point here.
Yes.
All right, PC 11-19. This is an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending chapter 29 of the North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Land Development Regulations by amending Article 5, Division 14, entitled Parking and Loading, specifically at Section 5-1406, entitled Prohibited Parking and or Storage, and amending Article 7 at Section 7-101, entitled Definitions to Prohibit Parking of Commercial Vehicles, 1 in the R1 district and 2 overnight on city-owned property, providing for repeal, conflict, severability, codification, and for an effective date. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you bring up the PowerPoint for me, please? Once again, for the record, Debbie Love, City Planner, Community Planning and Development. This particular amendment modifies how we allow how we handle commercial vehicle parking. Let me move through my PowerPoint. This is going to actually amend 2 sections of the code, 51406, which deals with parking and storage of RVs and different types of uses, commercial vehicles in particular in this case. And it, as the title said, it's going to prohibit in the R1 overnight parking of commercial vehicles, as well as in the city parking lots and the right-of-ways. And it redefines commercial vehicle, so a little more clarification. as well as providing some exemptions. And I know each of you have gone through it, and some of you have talked with me about it. These are some examples of what we're talking about. While there's no lettering in the upper left-hand corner photograph, it does have equipment on it so that it appears as a commercial type vehicle. Same with the one on the upper right. And the lower pictures are just the real obvious with the signage, things like that. So this is trying to capture both of those. And, oops, sorry, went backwards. So after tonight, although it had been previously scheduled for the 6/11 and 6/25, we have to reschedule those meetings with City Council due to just a really heavy agenda. So those dates for first and second reading before City Council will be determined soon. We'll be having a special meeting just to deal with all the items that we had going to City Council on the 11th and the 25th. And then again, as typical, after second reading, it's 10 days and then it becomes effective.
So we're presuming an effective date somewhere September, October?
I would assume we're actually looking for the first special hearing dates, and we have looked at those availability and presented them to the city manager for his review and discussion with the council members as to which dates would work for them. But we certainly want this to be done as soon as possible.
Sure.
Okay? And
Okay.
that's the end of my presentation, sir.
Well, that was certainly quick. All right, at this point, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this item is welcome to step forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Are both mics on?
Well, we hope they are.
We'll
If
find
not,
out.
we'll find out in a moment.
Is that better? Okay.
There you go. Ooh,
Oh, yes,
it's on.
it's on. Phyllis Lehman, 2100 San Souci Boulevard, apartment 1004, North Miami, Florida. As a resident who lived through the Home Depot expansion coming through and the question of traffic and vehicles parking on San Souci Boulevard, I would support this kind of a change. I just am looking at it for the first time. I would like to have an idea, and I'll speak with Debbie, and I'm sure she'll expand my knowledge as the areas that are going to be fully affected. Is it R1 and R2?
No, ma'am, it's currently just R1.
Just R1. That's us, San Souci. R2 had nothing to say. That's sad.
Well,
Okay.
doesn't this also affect Keystone Point?
Yes, any of the R1s, so it's San Souci and Keystone.
Okay, so,
Okay.
all right.
So, and then the size of vehicles. Does it explain the length and minimal length, maximal lengths? Is that going to be approached at all? So if I had my car that had a magnet on the side, it's affected.
Well, if the magnet advertises your commercial business,
Correct.
you would say yes, that would be effective.
I did.
That would
But-
qualify it as a commercial vehicle.
Yes.
Now, of course, if you pull into the driveway and take the magnet off and throw it in the trunk, then it
So
becomes
then
a
it's no
private
longer in.
vehicle.
Yes.
That's right.
But that's the definition. Thank you.
That's the way it would, that's the practical applicability of this.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker.
Good evening, is this on?
Sounds like it.
You're
Yeah.
on.
You're on.
Good evening,
Yes, you're definitely on.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. What's presented to you seems like a very simple thing, but it's not. The devil's in the details. We just went through a very interesting campaign where every candidate, the 19 candidates, all said we're one city. We're all united, nothing's different. But I'm glad that Mike McDermott and Charlie and Kevin and James and Melton, you all live in second-class neighborhoods. Because we're going to allow all the commercial vehicles that want to be out there to be there. Just go ahead because you guys are second-class citizens. You don't live in the R1. That's shameful that we're even discussing this as just something in R1. I know we had a town hall meeting, workshops about this, But where were the people from R1 that went to the Margolis Center to talk about this? The fact that we're even bringing this up right now and dividing the city even further. Charles, you want a commercial vehicle parked next door to you with nothing to say? Kevin, James, Mike? But not in Keystone, not in San Souci. I live there. So that's number one. And indulge me a little bit, Mr. Chairman, because I had to address these rules when I sat up there. The second thing is, a new person moves into the city of North Miami, moves into Keystone Point. They want to unload their van, their moving van. They rent it for the weekend. They back it up there. Automatically, overnight, if they didn't get everything unloaded, they're in violation. Oh, well, code's not going to come out and cite them. You don't know that. Legally, they're breaking the law. There is no exception. I go to Home Depot, rent a truck, because I'm going to clean up my yard. And you rent the truck for the weekend. That truck is illegal to be in my front yard overnight. And I could get cited. Here's another thing. I went around and counted, according to our codes, 48 vehicles in Keystone Point alone that would be illegal because they're over the 1.5 ton limit, an F-150. If it's an F-250, if it's a Ram 250, if it's a dual wheel, no markings, no commercial, nothing. I got people that live in my neighborhood that haul boats, that work for boat companies. They own the boat companies. There's not a marking on these vehicles that costs anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000. I was a person's house today. It was a $160,000 pickup truck that any of us would love to have in our front yard, but that would be illegal if this ordinance passes through. I do not believe that you should be addressing this at this time. Allow staff to go back. Some of these items have been brought up to their attention. There is no exception to anything. There is no exceptions to these rules, which you have to build in some exceptions. You gotta build in that somebody can move into a house and have the weekend to unload their moving truck that they rented from Home Depot or U-Haul or wherever it may be. There is no exception. And you're gonna tell people that they have a dual wheel truck or a F-250, that they can't park their pickup truck that they drive with their family, no commercial markings, they can't park it in their front yard? But the biggest thing is the fact that we are going to institute rules that addresses one part of this community and keeps the rest of the city out. I find that appalling. I know the voices that were at that town hall meeting were, well, we're just worried about R1 first. Well, we've seen that before where you worry about one district first and then everybody else forgets about the rest. If you're going to tackle this, let's tackle it citywide. We addressed it at one time when I was mayor, and no school buses, no dump trucks. We had a very large controversy about taxi cabs, and that was people's livelihood, and we made exceptions for that. And we know what a commercial vehicle is. And the city, and then I'm gonna skip on, the city public parking lots are paid for by the taxpayers. Why would you not allow somebody to park their truck if they're a resident, but they have to take home their truck, to be allowed to park in a city public parking lot? It is a public parking lot. We don't charge for parking. Why would you not allow them to park a commercial vehicle in that parking lot that you're not gonna allow at their house? It's premature to put this item forward at this time. I've had the chance to discuss some things with staff, and I just think you guys need to look at it, put your opinion to it, but I think we're going on a dangerous road here if we're gonna start dividing this city into what districts get something and what districts don't. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to go on.
Yes.
A little long, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, he was a little long, but we'll allow that. I don't see a massive lineup of people here.
Well, it's long's long.
Yes, anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Well, step up. Don't sit there, or we'll be here all night. Rest of us.
You have as much time as you'd like, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's set it for 2 minutes and see what happens. Go ahead.
My name's Carrie Horton. This is the first time I'm here, 2010 South Hibiscus Drive. And I happen to be in R1. And I've received several violations. 4 years ago, I'll try to be brief, 4 years ago, my boat trailer stuck out maybe 2 feet beyond the face of my house. So I was cited, and I moved it behind the fence. It's been there ever since. But since April 24th, I was given notices of violation and told that I can't have a boat trailer beside my house anymore, at the side, behind the face. And I'm like, okay, so what do? I came into the city, and I was given 7 pages of paperwork and told that, first of all, I needed to pay $2,000, and I needed to apply for a variance, and that I was to call a land survey company, and that I needed to pay another $500 to have the land survey company do an aerial view of my house, and I needed to provide stamps and address labels in order to have a circumference, 1,000-foot diameter around my house, and every single home that was in that diameter, I would need to be able to provide mailing addresses and stamped envelopes to be able to ask every single house in that area whether or not I could have a boat trailer beside my house. So the reason I'm here tonight is to ask you that whatever you're about to do, for some reason, a boat trailer now in a boating community in South Florida, in R1, not in any other place in the city, in R1, which is a boating community, is now illegal. So I've been violated, and it looks like in order to be able to even get a hearing, the process is 6 months, and I would have to pay over $3,000, which is worth
May
more than the
continue.
trailer. So I just needed to speak up and let you know that that's completely, it doesn't make any sense. So if whatever you're gonna sign, if there's not gonna be any exceptions for boat trailers or any other type of, I think I'm over my time. But anyway, that's,
Yeah,
that's.
we
that's
get the picture.
May I ask a
Thank you.
question?
Yes, you may.
Yes. Were you aware of the meeting that was held at, a while back where they had all the residents express their displeasure or approval of this?
No,
Okay.
Can I comment?
Yes, you may.
This ordinance tonight has nothing to do with boat trailers. It has nothing to do with F-250s, Kevin.
I didn't think so. I
It
didn't
says
see anything
trailer.
in there.
That's a completely different part of the LDRs. And incidentally, an F-250 is not over 1.5 tons. It's a designation, a nomenclature on the side of the vehicle. It's got nothing to do with the tonnage of the vehicle. So I'm not trying to get into a debate about it. I'm just trying to explain that. But nothing we're talking about tonight addresses that. There is a whole separate meeting that was held that addressed boat trailers, boats, recreational vehicles, and the like as part of an administrative variance process, which is still to be discussed in front of this panel,
okay,
but that's got nothing to do with tonight.
okay, the
So
thing that I
we're-
received said
tonight we're doing-
RVs and trailers on it.
That's correct. So this got nothing to do with your boat trailer.
Okay,
Right. RVs are,
Commercial.
yeah.
So
and-
secondly, what this does have to do with is when Debbie showed the pictures of the vehicles, that people have been trying to get those prohibited for quite some time. And the problem we had with it was there was a flawed definition of a commercial vehicle. A commercial vehicle previously was any vehicle used in the commission of a business. So it was a use, not an appearance. So the example I used to use was Annie Montgomery's Mercedes. She's a realtor, she drives people around in it. That is in fact a commercial vehicle. It would be prohibited from being parked overnight if we prohibited commercial vehicles. So that was not the intent. When there was town hall meetings on the subject, the original proposal was, it's not a divisive proposal. The original proposal was to restrict commercial vehicles under a new definition from being parked in residential neighborhoods overnight. And there were people representing R2 neighborhoods that struggled with that. And they said, well, what about, we have people here that have taxi cabs. Everybody's got an example. So as opposed to saying, well, it's all or none, I think the discussion was, well, let's start it with R1 neighborhoods, and if people in R2 want it, let them have it. But let's not get into the fight because we can't make R1s and R2s agree on everything. So that was how it got to R1 as opposed to being some elite, divisive concept. So the boat trailers, the F2s, none of that's got anything to do here. We've redefined commercial vehicles so that they are appearance, not use. So that no code enforcement officer has got to knock on the door and go, what do you use that thing for? But to determine whether it's legally parked or not. So if it looks like a commercial vehicle, if it walks like a duck and it quacks, it's probably a duck. So that's all this is about. It's defined, and the example that was brought up, which I think is the only good thing to think about, is the guy that's got a moving van unloading. But I think everybody in the R1 neighborhoods at some point moved in. And I think there's no particular problem with the moving truck being there tonight while it unloads the furniture, because it's gone tomorrow. The intent of the ordinance is to prohibit the plumbing truck with buckets hanging off of it parking every night. So that's the objective here.
Why is that okay for it to do it in an R1 but not in an R2? To Kevin's
It's,
point.
to Kevin's point, is
It has
because
to be
people
citywide.
in, well, it doesn't have to be citywide. People in the R2 had a problem with it.
Yes, yeah, and if I may, Mr.
They,
Mr.
at the
Chair, they
town
did,
hall meetings, there was a universal desire for it to happen in all the R1 neighborhoods, and people in R2 had issues. So I said, fine.
Okay. Mr.
All right.
Chairman?
Can we let the
Before we-
public hearing finish, because I think we all want to jump in
Yeah,
on
we're
this, but
really
there-
getting
to
into
be
the
fair,
commission discussion, so,
There's
I mean,
actually
that's a good lesson, but
Let's hear everybody,
it's in
because
the wrong place.
we all
Yeah.
have something to say
That's
on
fine.
this,
Does anyone else wish to speak to this particular item? None, then
That's where I
that
thought
public
we were.
hearing is closed now.
That's where I thought
Thank
we
you.
were. Sorry.
Minor formality, but we have to go
Yes,
through
yeah.
this.
I'm
Public
sorry.
hearing is closed.
I wanted to hear some more, because I
But
think we all have
There isn't,
something to chime in on.
there's nothing more to be heard. It's now time for council discussion. So, Mr. Ernst, I'll be happy to, we've had a wonderful education there from Bob Pashon as to how we got here and what this ordinance does and does not address. Bob, do you have anything else you want to add, or
Not really. I mean, I
you
think
made
that's
the point? Very good.
reasonably,
Okay, Charlie, I'll let you speak next.
With respect to Kevin and respect to Bob, I talked with Debbie about this yesterday, and my feeling was mixed on this, because I live in R2, and quite frankly, I would be very upset if I had a dump truck parked next to me, because the guy was a contractor that owned a dump truck. So yes, I would not want that, and I would be the first one to complain about it. On the other hand, I don't have a problem with the man down the street who's a locksmith, and he parks his van that says Joe's Locksmith, for example, in front of his house, because he's on call to handle a problem with dealing with a customer that has a lock issue. Then I have a plumber who on weekends drives his truck home. Personally, it doesn't bother me, but on the other hand, I'm not his neighbor. I see it in the neighborhood, so I don't know how his neighbor would react. I think we get into a situation where it becomes a particular person's taste and dislike with whether or not they want that neighbor to have to look at that vehicle. And I can understand in District 2, there are a lot of working people that have trucks and vans and pickups that are small business owner. I'm a small business owner. I don't have a vehicle that has anything printed on it, and I run my business out of my home. But at the same time, the residents of R1, I can respect their, if it's a majority of opinion, that they don't want to see utility vehicles, maintenance vehicles parked in their neighborhood. On a personal basis, I can understand that. But on the other hand, I think we are opening up a Pandora's box by allowing this. Kevin brought up a point that I had discussed with Debbie regards to dividing the city into almost two classes, a working class and a group of people that don't want to see a maintenance truck parked next to him. I would be in that class because I wouldn't want to have to look at it in my neighborhood. But at the same time, I understand that there are working people in R2 that have to have those vehicles at home because they can't park it anywhere else, or they're on duty, or whatever. So we've kind of put ourselves in this position of having to decide, you know, which way we want to treat our residents. Bob, I can sympathize with you and understand. I can understand about trucks and cars parking in the swale area, that one of the residents brought up in her comment. I don't think that has anything to do with overnight parking. I mean, if we're zeroing in on overnight parking, I would try to find a way to want to compromise. If not, I mean, I would not vote against this if R1 wants that, and the easy way out is to say, fine, let them have their own rules and regulations, and let me deal with the fact that I'm gonna have neighbors that are gonna be allowed to park your utility trucks and their business trucks in that zone. So, I mean, I welcome any other comment from staff members, and
So you're saying
I-
it's okay to
I
fight
don't-
for
I don't-
their
yeah.
property values, but not fight for ours?
what's that?
It's okay to fight for their property
Well, I don't know if
values
it's,
and
if it's that much of a
Keystone,
property
but
value
not-
issue or not, because there's a gentleman who's a plumbing business owner, and I've noticed he comes home on weekends with his truck. He's got a fenced-in area. This home is absolutely gorgeous, and I walk by it, and truthfully, I kinda like, okay, fine. And I don't think his property is going down because of that. I think it's
Well-
premature to say that that would affect property values because somebody brings home a vehicle.
If
If
I-
somebody's
if
parking in the
Give you
swale
my
area.
If I may,
or-
this is the
One at a
compromise
time
you're
here.
asking for.
Mr. Chairman,
One at a
Because
time
the
here.
original,
okay,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mr. Ernst has to finish.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay,
No,
if you're
say
done,
This is the compromise you're asking for, because the original proposal was all single-family residential neighborhoods.
Right.
Because there is that
And
prohibition
believe it
now
or
in
not,
certain other areas.
I went to Debbie and I said, Debbie, why can't this apply to District 2? And then she said, we got tremendous amount of pushback, or R2. And the reason why is because there are a lot of working class folks that have pickup trucks that may have a sign on it or whatever, and they have no choice but to bring it home with them to park it, because they don't have the economic means to store that. And I don't know if we are in a position to punish them because of that. So,
And nobody's
you know,
trying
then
to.
that became a moral dilemma with me as far as how we would
just,
treat
Mike, I'll get to you.
those
Okay.
individuals.
All right, if we're, Charlie, if
Yes, I'll go ahead and yield, go ahead.
you'll yield to Mike. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, this is not a new issue. This is something that I remember 10 years ago we had this. And there wasn't really that much pushback in District 2. I think District 4 there was much more than there was in 2 or 3. But I know in District 2.
Not district zoning.
Yeah, but I know that in my neighborhood, I'm gonna give you 2 examples. One is over the Christmas holidays, I got several phone calls about tractor trailers that were parked in the neighborhoods. You know, we have that going on.
But that's illegal now.
Well,
See, that's what I have to,
No
that's
truck
what we have to
over
also
1.5
understand.
tons is
There are
allowed.
vehicles
So
that
I
aren't
can't,
allowed.
wait, gotta have one of you talking at a time.
Okay. The other thing is that there's a gentleman who lives in Keystone who owns a service business, who one of his, I guess, foreman lives in District 2, and all of his employees bring their trucks home to this guy's yard, and he's a 24-hour guy, so you have trucks coming and going all hours of the night. The owner lives in Keystone, but the trucks are all parked in District 2. So there is a real dispergence between, you know, District 1 and District 2. I mean, I'm not against District 1 and the ordinance tonight, but there definitely has to be something that goes across the city. You know, you can't say, well, we're gonna have a nice neighborhood over there and a so-so neighborhood over here. You can't have that. That's a real division in the city. And unfortunately, some people have a very myopic view of this, you know, there's certain neighborhoods are entitled to certain things and other neighborhoods are not. So I think, I'm not against the ordinance, but I think we need to make things citywide. I mean, fair is fair, you know, it should be across the board. And there's a lot of things in District 2 that, in reference to commercial vehicles and that kind of thing, that has not been addressed, it needs to be addressed.
All right, does that sum up your position, Mike?
I concur with you, Mike, on
Okay.
that, and,
I would-
comments?
All right, let me move to the left. Mr. James,
I don't have any comment.
you have none. All right, then Milton, as the freshman member of this commission, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to 14 years ago when we built our house, and then all of a sudden, we started having these vehicles parking all around. We weren't being focused on, but Keystone was. And we don't want to move. Now we ended up where there's a parking lot, and Kevin remembers back years ago, a parking lot which is now getting all of these other vehicles, commercial vehicles, right there, right in our backyard. Now, the other thing that we have to keep an eye out on, what's gonna happen when all of a sudden zoning changes and it becomes an R6 and you don't know about it. So
What because, like,
I'm just speaking from
It's a
personal
hypothetical.
experience. Yeah.
R1 becomes R6?
R2 becomes R6.
If Solo Mia jumps over the highway.
Right. It happens. It happened to me. That's why I'm here now. Because of not having enough oversight for my own property. So that's why I go back to, why is it okay to fight and put a rule in place for someone else's property values, but not for our own?
Well,
Okay, I propose to amend this to include the entire city.
I second it.
Is everybody happy now?
well, in which case it would die. I'm going to give you my thoughts on this one. Speaking from the west side of town, we view nominal commercial vehicles as part of a healthy economy. We're a working class area, people have to work, they need their vehicles for work, and they don't have the luxury of owning multiple vehicles. Our problem on the west side of town is semi-tractor trailers. There are people who consistently park the semi-tractor trailers in the swales, and there seems to be a completely ineffective enforcement of the current laws and ordinances. The trailers never get towed away, the police never seem to write citations, code enforcement is non-existent when it comes to problems like this. That's our problem. We don't worry about a plumbing truck. Good God, I'd love it if there was a plumber in my neighborhood. So you never know when you need one of those boys, you know? And that doesn't faze me at all. I understand Keystone has certain holier-than-thou attitudes. And I think we're having a situation in Keystone where people have elevated commercial trucks to rolling works of art. Not enough to put a simple sign and a license number on it anymore. Now you have to keep up with the Joneses on virtually everything that's out there. So we've just lost half our audience. I'm crushed and hurt. I guess
I think they realized they were wrong.
Parks and Rec, yes, the wrong place, okay, yeah. And send them to wherever they're, yeah. Yeah, sure, right, they can, meet in my backyard, it's okay. relative to this ordinance, I don't really see it as dividing the city. This is part of citizen action for something. People in Keystone feel motivated enough to lobby for this. They feel it's unique to Keystone and Sans Souci, so if they feel that strongly, they have the right to put this ordinance forward. Whether or not the city council will adopt it ultimately is a horse of a different color. But they have the right to raise the issue, and they probably have some valid points to be made. Our problem, again, on the west side isn't whether somebody's a plumber or a delivery guy or a taxi cab owner. Our problem is semi-tractor trailers that we can't seem to get rid of because there seems to be zero enforcement on that point, even though it is against the law to park them there. Nobody seems to know whether it's the police department or code enforcement that used to be under the police department. Before that, it was independent, and I don't know where it is today. I have no idea what department it's under. So, now it's independent again. So this was the problem on the west side. Get rid of the semi-tractor trailers. We can live with the rest of it rather easily. And I don't see that as dividing the city. I understand Kevin's perspective. I don't quite share this one, and I have a great deal of respect for Kevin. He, having been a former mayor and been up and down, and he knows the city inside and out. And 99 out of 100 times, I'm totally in agreement with him. But on this one, if the citizens of Keystone, the residents of Keystone, they're not an independent country yet, choose to take this issue and carry it forward, I won't get in the way as long as it's clearly limited to Keystone and Sans Souci. I would not want to see this effective citywide. This is very detrimental to the blue-collar working-class areas of the city, and we have, as we well know, quite a lot of blue-collar working-class neighborhoods, and we need these service vehicles. People have to stay employed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I make a suggestion or a
You
motion?
can suggest anything you like.
Okay. Obviously, from a lot of different standpoints, this ordinance is incomplete, okay? But I understand that taking it back to zero and redrafting would be a semi-nightmare.
What do you view as incomplete?
Addressing the issues, because I'm going to tell you, in Central City, we have a lot of problems, not only with the tractor trailers, with the tow trucks, with multiple commercial vehicles being parked because and I can take you through Central City and show you numerous places where people literally are operating a commercial business out of their home, and they park 2 and 3 and 4 trucks, on their front lawn. So obviously, we have some real problems with parking issues in other than District 1. My suggestion or motion would be to pass this particular ordinance with instructions of staff to try to prepare some kind of evaluation or ordinance for the rest of the city in reference to commercial vehicles.
I would not view that as preparing an ordinance, but rather as requesting funding for a study.
Well, I think it's both, really.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
yes, but the study would tell us whether or not we need.
Well, the
an
motion
ordinance.
is to approve the ordinance.
Okay, the
Okay.
chair can accept.
And then the second thing would be, I guess instructions to staff would be the way to put it, not necessarily a study. Listen, we have enough studies on this particular subject to sink a battleship.
Yes,
okay?
but
We don't
unfortunately,
need
none of
any
those
more
studies are before us.
What we need to do is have some sort of ordinance or plan prepared and proposed that people can realistically take a look at and comment on. But anyway, my motion was to,
Your motion is to adopt the
Yeah,
ordinance as
yeah.
presented.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't see anything in here about F-250 trucks. I know a friend of mine many years ago who was quite proud of his F-250 and didn't buy it for commercial purposes.
There's a different section of the LDRs that addresses parking, and every city's got it, that it's illegal to park overnight a truck in excess of 1.5 tons. And it used to be 1 ton, And at the last comp plan, it was changed to 1.5 tons.
Yeah, because 1 ton was a little too small.
Right.
So
It just
that's
wasn't
on the books,
practical.
correct?
That's on the books. It's got
We
nothing to
already
do with
have-
what we're
we have-
talking about now.
Right.
Is there
So
But
the
my-
tow trucks and the tractor trailers and the 3 and 4 trucks on the lawn, there's no need for an ordinance. It exists. Somebody needs to call code enforcement
Right.
and
May-
get
may I
Crystal
ask
to
that question?
understand it's against the
Exactly.
code and have people cite it.
Right,
May I
I
ask
mean,
Yes, you may, go ahead, Jason,
All right.
you know, let's get it out there, we're on
Debbie,
the record.
for the other portions of the code that Bob was bringing up that limits it based on the weight or the tonnage of the vehicle, is there any way we could amend that one to add language where we can say if there is an excess amount of commercial vehicles that, you know, maybe residents or in the neighborhood or can petition or bring it up to code enforcement as an evaluation, you know, like on a single case-by-case basis? Because what if you have a company that you know that ordinance and you live in those areas, and instead of getting a huge vehicle, you get a bunch of small ones and you park them in your house? Can we add language to that limits maybe the amount, so that way it's not at least an excessive amount of commercial vehicles in the areas that
Because you're
don't
asking
mind?
to
I thought there was
restrict the
already-
number of commercial vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, right now, this isn't specific
No.
to commercial vehicles. It says any truck over 1.5, so that would take care of your bobcats, your dump trucks, your tow trucks, those other things.
Right.
So they can't park anyway.
So
Right,
that's
no, I'm
all
saying-
included, it's just a lack of
Yeah.
enforcement.
No, I'm saying set this ordinance aside, because Bob said that there was another portion of our code that speaks to that you can't have these larger vehicles.
Right.
That what section is that? That's
It's actually 51406, which is the same section that we're in.
Okay.
Toward the amendment. It's just a different, and it says, no truck in excess of 1.5 ton load capacity shall be stored or parked in any residential area of the city unless said truck is actively engaged in loading or unloading of materials.
so to that ordinance, could we amend it and maybe limit like the amount of vehicles or something like, or commercial
There
vehicles?
really
that
wouldn't
we
be a
could-
need to, because
No?
if it's illegal, it's illegal, you don't.
But
need-
only by the amount
No,
of
but what
the
he's,
weight.
what he's saying is
Weight.
it may have 1-ton truck, but there may be
But
5
we don't know that, we don't, nobody's weighed the truck, you see, so we can't jump at that.
Well, he's
Jennifer,
trying,
if
he's
I may
trying to
jump
say
in.
multiple.
You may,
Yeah.
Jennifer.
What may help the issue that you present, Commissioner James, is that the city council did recently adopt a mechanism where neighborhoods can establish a controlled residential parking district within their area if they
Okay.
did lobby and
As-
petition.
Really?
Okay.
And it would limit the amount of commercial vehicles in their area parking along the
neighborhood.
streets. And it
Oh.
would be by
By
neighborhood. I
neighborhood.
think
didn't
that's
know
what
that.
you were
would that
getting
take
at,
under
but
the
I'm not
guidelines
sure.
of what a homeowners
That's very
association-
similar. That's actually easier. That's way better.
But now, what would that mechanism be?
Yeah.
Because if they're not a homeowners association and they're just a neighborhood, what power do they have
I'll
to
let Jennifer
issue a
speak to that.
citation?
So the ordinance lays out certain criteria that would have to be established in order for the district to be set up, but it would start with a petition of the residents. It's a certain, I believe it's a ratio, a percentage of the residents that get together and petition for this district.
Okay.
Once the mayor and council get this, package, then staff would do an analysis and a review and report to mayor and council whether the criteria's been met, to establish a residential parking district. So we're hoping to get our first one done soon, but that, you
And-
should be
and
seeing
the-
that
and the
coming up soon.
language- And the language would include the swale areas, which I think is a major
Correct.
issue, because, and double parking in yards, front yards, or small driveways that can't fit in there, or overlapping the sidewalks, blocking sidewalks, issues like that, which is common throughout the whole city. Granted that.
So that's already in place. That just got recent.
It's on the books.
On the books.
And we're working to secure our first controlled parking district.
Okay.
So
You
then-
should be seeing it
So when
coming
you-
up in mayor and council level.
So when you
It's
put
just
that
not
into
there yet.
perspective, I think, because I was kind of on the fence when I'm hearing everyone talking, and especially Kevin. What he pointed out was that, they came out, they really say that this is a problem in that community, and they shouldn't be ignoring. They feel like that is really important to them. But at least if there's other mechanisms that we have in the code that speaks to the other neighborhoods that really are not minding, then, you know, I think that could provide relief or for other folks that, you know, are
Well,
hesitant.
If it's already illegal, it's illegal. Our problem isn't the legality at that point. It's it's some kind of effective code enforcement or law enforcement issue.
I
but would
see
that-
no
would that-
It's
mechanism.
already on the books.
I see no mechanism to enforcement that would satisfy everybody on this
Oh.
committee as far as what the city does to try to deal with this problem. I mean, I'm unaware of the fact that just an example, what that lady went through because of her boat trailer. Now, if that's a mechanism, I don't think anybody knew about that. So my
was-
concern is that if we come up with any kind of ordinance regarding commercial vehicles, is that there's a mechanism that we can put in place that everybody knows about as far as this is what you can't do and this is what you can do, size, length, and everything else. There's nothing there.
Well, it seems
as
that
I'm
the city
concerned.
council has finally moved in that direction, and they've established the guidelines for the mechanism. And now it's up to, I presume, the city attorney's office to develop a practical application for that, to find how that'll be employed.
So could this apply to R1 without having them have their own little separate?
So the way
code.
the residential controlled parking program works, it's specific to the needs of the area. So the restrictions and the criteria will really be defined by the neighborhood characteristics.
Similar to what this is doing.
Right, but it'll be limited, instead of it being applied to the entire R1 or the entire R2, it'll be a limited designated area.
But the whole
for-
Keystone could come out, right?
But the
Or bigger.
residents have to physically go there, petition.
Exactly.
Oh,
apply
I
for
see.
it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, because not every neighborhood will
Yeah.
want to do that.
Right.
Or
Maybe,
parent.
but maybe
Right.
your
Yeah.
neighborhood, Melton, where you are, says you go around and you, out of 8, whatever the percentage is, if you meet that
Yeah.
threshold, then you all can figure out and say, here are the issues that we are facing and that we would like to see addressed. The problem with the citywide application of this is the last time you all did this in 2015, it was shot down and never saw the light of day to city council because there was so much pushback from other areas of the city that just did not find, they were really concerned about it. And again, going back to the chair's concerns about the businesses, and we had a good contingent of folks in R2 at that workshop that were really struggling and actually said, please don't apply this because of their issues. Now, if a neighborhood turned out and you got 80% of your whatever the threshold is, and they all got together, then they could have something specific for them in their neighborhood.
Well,
I
I
have a-
think what the thought is, though, that, you know, we're providing an ordinance here that automatically takes care of certain areas of the city, where the other areas of the city have to fight like dogs to get the same thing that they're gonna get automatically. So,
Well,
side of
bear
the
in
tracks.
mind,
because there's-
Keystone had to
Also
get
known
out
as
and
other
raise
side of the
issue.
tracks.
Exactly, so it really, in many ways,
take
Debbie, it
offense.
really is
I
an
take
equity.
issue with that.
Okay? It really is an equity, because, you know, you're getting one side of town who says, okay, we get it automatically, and then everybody else has to fight for it.
Well, but
I take
see,
it, Mike,
But
I take
let's-
issue with that because I was at the town hall meetings, and the people on the east side of town wanted it. Fight like dogs, if you guys had wanted it, you would have it. The idea behind this was the compromise that Charlie was asking for. We initially suggested this be done in all residential districts. There are people that didn't want it. So as opposed to saying, well, you gotta have it, no, that's not the case at all. Nobody's trying to make anybody do anything, but you're trying to take the position that you've got people that don't like this at all, so nobody should ever have it. Because that's elitist.
Bob, I put a motion on the floor to pass it. That's not the issue at all. You're missing the entire point.
Entitled was the word you used.
What?
Entitled was the word you used earlier.
I didn't think I used the word entitled.
Yeah.
I think it said there was an inequity.
No,
Okay.
you said entitled. This group
Okay.
thinks they're entitled to it, and I'm taking issue with that only because this was no entitlement. Nobody walked in and said, we want to do this in the R1 districts. We said we want to do it in residential districts. Then with the pushback, everybody said, fine, let the districts choose.
Well, I was at the town hall meetings as well, and I remember a little different conversations going on, but that's not the point tonight, and rather than get into discussion, I do have a motion that's on the floor to pass this
All right,
ordinance.
Mike has made a motion. Do we have a second to
Second.
the motion? Seconded by Bob Pashon. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that part's carried.
No, I'm not in.
You're opposed.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one opposed and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. This will go down 5 to 1. Okay? It's carried 5 to 1. Thank you, Milton. Didn't mean to railroad you into a group you didn't want to be part of.
That's okay, and it's Melton, not
Melton, I'm sorry, Melton. You know, I need to have that written out somewhere, because I get that wrong every time. Melton.
Now,
That's
can
all right.
we,
Milton was my father.
Mr. Chairman?
Ah, yes, yes.
Wait till new business, but direct staff.
It's okay.
Sore subject.
All right, now, I have a question for Jennifer. Now, this neighborhood scenario thing that the council has done, is there gonna be a proposal and funding to designate and make parking lots for that?
No, I believe it's, there's no additional parking that's being created. It's taking the parking that's already there and restricting it.
I'm just looking ahead, you know, maybe 5 years down the road, if they really want to do this. One of our big problems all over the city, you know, is inadequate parking for all kinds of reasons. You know, wonderful family lives next door to me. They have 5 cars. I think you get to the age of 10, I guess they get a car. You know, it's just, they're lined up.
Or they turn their front yard into a parking lot.
But in a city this
Literally
size, why
paved
can't
over.
we simply just have a parking division, someone to actually oversee these problems, instead of pinning it off on the police, which they don't
Well,
need
no,
to
we
be
have,
doing
we
this.
have a code enforcement
Code enforcement.
that doesn't do anything
Not
about
at
this.
that, not at night.
Yes, not nights and weekends, and that seems to be a big part of the
That's
problem.
the whole point. I mean,
So,
how are
I
you gonna
mean,
have
you know.
a department oversee
Yeah, you
something,
have-
a problem, when they're not on?
Code
the clock
enforcement
at that time.
basically is 10 to 4. You know, that really,
I
that's
mean,
what it
come
comes
on.
down to, Monday through Friday, 10 to
Does-
4.
does-
I
Am
don't
I the
know if
only
it-
one
yeah.
that's
Well, I don't know
missing
if
the
it's a
whole
a
point
problem
here?
with funding, with not having enough code enforcement officers
Again, it doesn't
or
need to be a
what.
code,
But-
if you look at any other metropolitan city, look at New York. They don't have code enforcement out there writing tickets. I mean, meter maids aren't code enforcement people. We need to have actually a department created that can handle the parking issues.
It is a consideration, certainly if the city is going to undertake one day to build a parking garage in Center City, it might be quite feasible for them to allocate an entire floor for commercial vehicles and let people park their vehicles in the garage. That wouldn't bother me at all. I think that would be a good use of city funds. You're gonna build 5 stories or 6 stories for the garage, you're gonna hold 300 cars, 500 cars, whatever it is. You allocate up to 100 spaces for commercial vehicles, and you make the commercial property owners that they want it, they got the business. This is your permit fee to park your vehicle there. I can see that as something that might be handled down the road in that way, and that would be a viable way for a parking authority to come into play. One of the things I see with our city is not unlike other cities. Everybody wants the garage, but the garage they're talking about is gonna be too small before it ever gets built. You see, unfortunately, you know,
Well-
and this is just
Well,
where we're
did
going
you know,
with
I
this.
lived on Ocean Drive in South Beach in 1990, and I went through all of this when the parking was a nightmare. And how the city really handled it is that the parking tickets, they were out constant. I can't tell you how much I paid in parking tickets. I built a garage myself. This is my point. We're not thinking about the parking issue smart here in North Miami. We could have these parking lots that could have already been paid by by my neighbor that's got 5 cars. If they were ticketed every day, it wouldn't happen. And I'm a realtor. I have lost deals just recently because of a client driving through a neighborhood at night and seeing that. oh, during the day it's great.
Well,
I came by at night,
You
sorry.
know, you notice that we have those commercial lots behind the businesses north of 125th Street that are largely empty, day and night. And
So
so,
let's-
the city could turn one of those into a commercial lot for the time being and see where the demand goes. But as I say, these are just concepts, and we beat this to death. The ordinance is passed. Let's try to move on to the next thing. Debbie, I know you have a report you want to give us.
I do, yes, sir.